Welcome and good morning, everybody. My name is Frank Salas. I go by the name The Talented Mr. Salas. I sell real estate down here in sunny Austin, Texas, where we get 300 days of sunshine with Remax. I'm also a social media growth hacker, and I make social media work for you. And I also have an outsourcing company in the Philippines where one US American dollar is 50 Filipino pesos. But today we're going to be talking about another Frank, Mr. Frank Clark out in New York City. Frank, tell the fine folk about yourself.
Hey, how are you guys? Thank you, Frank, for having me on your show. I really appreciate it. Nice to see you again and talk with you again. I am a serial entrepreneur and I've started several different companies. The first major company was a medical device company for which I raised more than $50 million. That company is now publicly traded on the NASDAQ. It's Cytosorbents, Inc. I'm also co-founder of a company called Game On 365 Sports. We're a real estate development company and we're building a sports complex up here in Westchester County, New York. And I also run a couple of different shows here on Blab and live streaming. And I'm expanding that now beyond Blab as transitions happening in the live streaming world. So I do shows typically at noon, one called Perfectly Frank Conversations, the other called Business Lunch with Frank and Tom with my partner, Tom Martin. And there we interview thought leaders in business, entrepreneurship, the world of startups. And then lastly, I also run a conference with a couple of partners called Startup Con Live. We've done 2 conferences, and it's, again, all about best practices for startups and entrepreneurship.
Frank, I want to be like you when I grow up, man.
I haven't quite decided what I'm going to be yet when I grow up.
Frank, I'm so curious when I meet other serial entrepreneurs. Can you just tell us why you would want to be a serial entrepreneur? You're a guy that could excel on Wall Street. You're a guy that could excel in any field. Why be a serial entrepreneur? You work long hours. Sometimes you don't get paid. It's stressful. Why?
You know what? It's exciting, and it's the opportunities to basically, write your own book. Just write your own story and make it up as you go along. There's just an absolute thrill of, like not knowing where life is going to take you and how things are going to go. And then, doing something that can make a major change in the world or in somebody's life.
Definitely. We've got some comments here from our live studio audience. Vegan Travel says it's called volunteering for your organization. We've all been there.
The medical device company was a hell of a story. And when we started that company, and literally we started that company in a hotel room in Manhattan, and we didn't have a computer or anything. We were there for a couple of weeks, and then it was basically essentially a virtual company at the time, before such a thing was kind of like a common thing. But over a couple of months or whatever, we were just trying to figure out what are we going to be, what kind of a company is this. We had been presented with a whole slew of technologies that we discovered in the former Soviet Union after the collapse of the Soviet Union. So we had this vast wealth of intellectual property, and we had to figure out, what do we do with it? So we really literally just, were making it up as we went along and kept putting one foot in front of the other, and discovered that, this one particular technology that we ended up developing into the medical device company, had legs, had the kinds of things that you could build a company around. And so we just went for it. It wasn't easy, believe me. It wasn't easy. And there were a lot of, back to back 16-hour days. I remember at one point working 29 days in a row or something like that without a break. So there was, maybe like a day break and then like another 28 days or something. It was just, it was brutal. But you do what you got to do to make stuff happen, right?
Absolutely. You said something that piqued my interest. You said that at some point, somewhere in there, you realized what you were working with was big. Can you tell us about that? What was that aha moment for you?
Well, the aha moment was right from the get-go. I had just read a phenomenal book called Unlimited Wealth by Paul Pilzer. I highly recommend that book. But at the time, he was making the case that, traditionally people had made their fortunes in business, either on Wall Street or in real estate or in starting companies. But going forward, really the biggest opportunities were in technology development. Now, this is going back to, the mid 80s, right? So I took that to heart because I'd been interested in real estate. Actually, I got my master's degree in real estate development at NYU back in the day, and thought that was going to be the career path that I went down. But like I said, I had read that book, and this opportunity presented itself. I happened to have studied Russian in high school, so I had a little bit of advantage in working with the scientists over there, et cetera. And it came together. I was like the right place at the right time, the right person to actually take advantage of the opportunity.
Hey, Frank, we have a question. Who was the author of that book, Unlimited Wealth?
That is Paul Pilzer, Pilzer. Fantastic book.
Cool, Paul Pilzer. We got that. Awesome. So that's amazing. So you put the work in. You realized you had the opportunity. You doubled down on your work. It ended up working out. But somewhere in there, you had to do my favorite part of business, and you had to raise capital. Can you tell us about that?
Absolutely. So, again, so my background had been, as I started out actually as a programmer doing financial forecasting software, and gravitated to Wall Street, working in on the research side, equity research side. So I was, developing a background in finance, but I was not an investment banker. I was not a trader. I was not a broker. And I had to figure all that part out by myself. So I turned to books and, started reading books on writing business plans, raising capital, marketing, selling, everything I get my hands on. And, looked for mentors wherever I could find them. And one of the early books that inspired me was Harvey Mackay's How to Swim with the Sharks Without Being Eaten Alive. So it's Harvey Mackay, Mackay. And he really emphasized the power and the importance of networking and building out a network. And so I took that to heart and set out to become like a phenomenal networker. There's a great book now, Never Eat Alone by Keith Ferrazzi, which essentially talks about the same thing. But get out and meet people. It's all about business is about meeting people and finding people that you can work with, you can do business with, that you can build your company with. So, get out there, start shaking hands, go to networking events. I love Blab because I call it the 24/7, 365 global networking event. I would not have met you had it not been through Blab, right?
Yeah, we had done an interview on, I was interviewing a brand new entrepreneur, and, I'm 8 years in the game, but I'm 28 years old. Like, I'm still a baby in the game. And you just came in and you blew our mind.
That's where I was when we started the medical device company. So I was 27, 28.
Okay, cool.
That's where we began. And, again, I just realized I had a hell of a lot to learn. So I started and I was not a reader, by the way. I was a math major because I didn't like to read books. So I forced myself to become a reader and became a voracious reader and learned a hell of a lot from some people a lot smarter than me, Of course, their experience and their years in business, et cetera.
Definitely. One of my mentors told me that the best secrets in the entire world are hidden in books.
Absolutely. I mean, if everybody who's listening to this broadcast or is interested in entrepreneurship or business and how to succeed, a must read is Napoleon Hill's Think and Grow Rich. That's like the starting point for any entrepreneur.
Absolutely. That's one of my must reads as well. Think and Grow Rich is a phenomenal book. Please make sure that you get that out there. So you've been an entrepreneur for how long right now?
Oh, God. I mean, I guess 25 years going back to the start of that company. But even before that, working on Wall Street, that was a very entrepreneurial type of environment. So, in fact, I was working with Drexel Burnham, which no longer exists. They went bankrupt shortly after I joined there. And because I had, some skills in financial forecasting and Excel, I got involved with the head of the departments that I was working in to develop a business plan and create financial forecasts to help spin that company or that department out into a new company. So, early on in my career, I was, involved in, okay, how do we take this opportunity and pivot it and turn it into something else?
Definitely. I want to maybe pause on the show real quick and give a big shout out to Miss Annette. That's sunshinelady.net. She's out in Germany, and she's constantly making a point to showcase support for all the blabs that I do. So I just want to give a big shout out to Annette out in Germany.
Thanks, Sunshine Lady. Annette.
So Frank, what I'm hearing is that you put yourself in a position where other people and their company had trained you to have these skills, and you learned, and you had a lot of failure, which most people would call that failure, but for you it was learning, and you took that knowledge and that experience and applied it towards your own endeavors. Can you maybe talk to us a little bit about the skills that you didn't know that you had, but just magically appeared, and you're like, oh yeah, I know how to do that, once you were building this company?
Yeah, well, I mean, the financial forecasting turned out to be extremely important, and that was something that, again, I'd learned just because it was my job, and it was, but it turns out it's the core of all, all business and business planning processes and so forth. So it's a critically important skill that I kind of like stumbled onto in my first job.
Nice.
So that was important. And then the ability to learn and, adapt. So, starting out in programming and computers, it was even then was constantly changing. So you had to always be staying current on the latest developments of the new processors, the new devices, the new so forth. So that's something that's, continued and served me well, staying on top of technology and staying top of developments, and then being flexible and adapting well to change. So the world is constantly changing. The world of business is always changing. People are always changing. You got to be able to and willing to adapt and be flexible. That's such an important skill in business.
And speaking of being adapted and being flexible, so you've been in business for about 25 years now. I'm 28 years old, so like I grew up with the internet coming into fruition and smartphones and stuff. But you've been able to, like, as a businessman, comprehend it, understand it. You're obviously on live stream right now. So where do you see live stream headed? I mean, you see major shifts in technology and communication in your business experience. Where do you see live stream taking things?
It's a great question, and I see live stream really taking off in the next, 1 to 2 years. And there's so many technologies like exploding out now, with Facebook getting into the game, and they're, playing catch up, but they've obviously got the dominant, social media platform. So you're going to see a lot of innovation around that. You're going to start to see a blending, and we're already seeing it between different types of, separate and disparate technologies coming together into like single use platforms. So we saw it with, where Amazon, back in the late 90s started out, and they were just a bookseller, and now all of a sudden they're selling everything under the sun, but they're also doing, Amazon Web Services, and they're now into live streaming, and, so you're getting like cross, transmedia types of platforms. Same thing with Facebook, was like a college, Connect website. And now, it's like the global, marketing platform. So you're going to see a blending of things like eBay and Amazon and live stream all coming together, where people are doing like live infomercials with a click here button to buy now, with a back end set up on, like a blending. Think of like a sales funnel, like a lead funnels or new Kajabi or ClickFunnels, combined with eBay, combined with, a Blab or a Periscope type of a platform.
Yeah, that's phenomenal that you bring that up. In the next 30 days, I'm going to be making a push on LMS's learning management system, and Amazon is getting in that game, like you just said. And
right.
there's going to be so much opportunity for those types of platforms. Now, let's maybe switch gears. So, I'm 8 years in the game. You have 25 years in the game as an entrepreneur. If somebody is at a job that they just maybe despise, hate, or just don't like, they don't want to do that for a living, what kind of advice would you give to that person, Mr. Clark?
Great question. So I was there too. I was trying to figure out at one point, do I make the leap? Do I, go try and do something entrepreneurial? So number one, educate yourself. Okay. If you want to go start a business, figure out first while you're, working and have somebody paying your salary and you're able to pay your mortgage, figure out first, like, what skills do you have? What kind of a business do you want to be in? How do you educate yourself and train and learn the skills that you're going to need to be able to succeed in business? So, read books, attend webinars, go to seminars, go to live events, go to networking events, learn as much as you can, and then also save up as much money as you can so that you've got, at least a year's worth of money in the bank for paying your rent, paying your mortgage, paying your bills, and so forth. And then the other thing too is when you do make that transition, it's an adjustment, because all of a sudden, if you don't have income coming in, you're going to have to scale back on lifestyle and things like that. So again, that's where being flexible and adaptable comes in. If you got to move back in with mom and dad for 6 months and work out of their house, you're a young entrepreneur, that's what you got to do. There's no shame in that. Do it and figure out how you succeed in that business so that, 2 years, 3 years, 5 years down the road, you're able to pay off their mortgage for them.
That's the truth. I mean, I'm laughing because I did that. I dropped out of college at 20 years old to start my first business, and I lived with 3 months with my parents, 5 months with my girlfriend at the time, and then after that 8 month, I was paying their bills. I remodeled my parents' house, and it definitely paid off. It definitely paid off. So that's great that you bring that up. We've got some questions from the live studio audience. I'm gonna give a big shout out to Mr. Daniel Roberts. He is a concert level pianist who I'm serving right now in the Talent Tribe, and he won a scholarship to my 30-day intensive, the Talent School. And his question is, Mr. Frank Clark, what is your big why? Why did you want to be a serial entrepreneur?
So my big why, and it came partially out of working on Wall Street and trying to figure things out. So I was working at Merrill Lynch doing big institutional, working with big institutional clients. What you would view as the hedge funds today, or family offices, or big banks, etc. And I just felt like a cog in a machine. Here I am, just out of college or whatever, but all I'm doing is working to make people who are already billionaires or multimillionaires like a little bit richer, right? There's got to be something more I can do with my life, with my career. So I wanted to build something that was going to make a lasting impact on the world, that was going to make a difference in the world. And again, my first thought of how I was going to do that was turning toward real estate. I wanted to build buildings. I wanted to build skyscrapers, right? That was my thought process of where I was in my life at the time and what I wanted to do. But I really just wanted to do something that was going to, leave some kind of a legacy, some kind of a lasting impact on the world, and make a positive difference in the world.
Frank, what is it with men and wanting to build tall buildings? What is it? Like, I have the same desire.
I don't know. It's we're not going to go there.
We got my brother Kevin Arrows, my brother Kevin Arrows out across the pond. He's out in the UK. He says, "What's the biggest mistake you see startups currently making?"
So, the biggest mistake, I think, is people simply, they just jump off the cliff and they don't know what they're doing, and they don't know when to get coaching, or they try and keep everything to themselves. So, here's a little quote for you. I mean, if you want to keep it all, then keep it small. But if you want to build your dream, you need to build a team. Okay. You got to have people on your team who are stronger than you in certain areas. So if you're not an accountant, if you're not an admin, if you're not a finance guy, if you're not a salesperson, find the people who are and surround yourself with them. Build that team, because that's going to take you to your dream.
I love it. I'm typing this down in the comments below. If you want to keep it all, keep it small. If you want your dream, build a team.
If you want to build your dream, build a team.
To build your dream, build a team. Is that your quote?
I got the first part from somebody else. I think Jonathan Tripp was saying that. Keep it all small on his quote, but I was like, well, that's like a perfect setup. You need the rest of that quote, So
right.
That's what I came up with.
Nice. No, and that's awesome. And that's really, I think, true about everything. We all stand on the shoulders of giants, and I can't be where I'm at if it wasn't for people ahead of me. And the people coming after me wouldn't be where they would be in live stream if it wasn't for guys like us who are really paving the way, putting the hours in right now, making it popular, pumping out content. And like you said, in a year or two, Frank, we have about a dozen people here live. we might have 1 million in 2 or 3 years. We might have 100,000 catching. Like, we don't know, you know?
No, exactly. And that's, if you look back on, and I was watching maybe a blab about this, but like bloggers now, the people who are like, you know, blowing it up, blogging, are the people who got started, you know, 10 years ago, let's say, in blogging, and it was like a small community of bloggers, and they would connect with each other just like we're doing here on Blab, right? And they would work with each other and you know, build out that community and that platform. To now, those people are, you know, some of the most successful people. They're doing keynote speeches all over the world. They're, you know, writing books, and everybody wants to be around them, right? It's the same thing that's going to happen in live stream. Live stream is in its infancy right now. I mean, literally, it only started really a year ago in terms of what, you know, we call like social live streaming with Periscope. You know, Periscope started, what, a year ago in April or something like that?
Yeah,
Blab
March.
started maybe like 11 months ago. So it's literally just in its infancy, and companies are already like leaving the space, right? So the people who are out here now figuring out the technology, figuring out and being flexible and adapting to, you know, what platforms are here, are the ones who are going to succeed long term. And then, yeah, like you said, they're the people who are going to be on the stages, writing the books, you know, having millions of followers, etc., in 5, 7, 10 years, whatever it might be. Maybe it'll be even accelerated because of all of the different tools that are available right now. I mean, now you can take your video, you can upload it to Facebook, you can upload it to YouTube, you can upload it. You know, you couldn't do that, you know, 15 years ago, 20 years ago. Technology didn't exist.
Right. Right. I have a quote for you, and it's: video killed the radio star, but live stream killed the blogger, you know?
Yep, exactly.
That's
exactly.
it. We got some questions in.
So, yeah, it's funny. You know, I grew up, you know, whatever, in the era of cable television. And I remember when MTV first came out, you know, and that video came out on the on MTV, and it was like all the big, you know, the big to do around that, and the Dire Straits video, you know, what was that, like in 1980 or something like that? But it's happening now. You're seeing transformation in technology, and this has been going on for hundreds of thousands of years, but the pace is accelerating all the time. So if you think about it, you know, the printing press, Gutenberg, 500 years ago, that was a transformative moment in human history. And we went from, you know, monks in monasteries hand copying books and texts and then being available only to a very limited number of people, to all of a sudden, you know, people could share their ideas in print and print books and leaflets and newspapers and share that with people all over, you know, all over the world. We're in the same kind of a transformative, you know, historical transformative event with the internet now, and we're seeing it because here we are today, live stream conversation on Blab, or it could easily be done on FireTalk or Spreecast or Huzzah or Crowdcast or Expertise.tv or any of the others, right? And we basically have our own television talk show, our own television network in a sense, similar to what, you know, Johnny Carson could have only dreamed of 50 years ago. So in 50 years, it went from being, you had to be like the one guy, you know, or Walter Cronkite or whatever, you know, the one superstar that broadcasts to everybody and everybody's watching 50 years ago, to now anybody who's got a computer, a laptop, or a phone can go out and start their own live streaming television talk show. So that's an amazing, you know, democratization of technology in terms of what becomes possible. So, you know, what we saw with the Renaissance, the Reformation, and the Enlightenment all came out of the invention of the printing press, because that enabled the sharing, the spreading of ideas and communication. Now with the net, and everybody's got a cell phone in their pocket all over the world, you know, we could be being watched right now by somebody in, you know, India or China or Africa or, you know, anywhere in the world. Anybody who's got a cell phone that could find this, either on the live version or on a recording, you know, 6 months, a year, 2 years from now, they've got access now to our ideas about, you know, entrepreneurship, about startups, and anything that we're talking about in this conversation. It's amazing.
Absolutely, absolutely. Now, We've got some questions in here. You brought up amazing points, and I maybe want to double down on the live stream. I personally have seen the benefits of live stream. I've only been on live stream since October of 2015. I have 3 sponsors. I have equity in a multi-million-dollar company, and I have affiliates with multiple companies. I'm turning down sponsorships left and right, speaking engagements left and right, because I'm trying to sell real estate down here in Austin, Texas. Like, I have a book of business, and I'm trying. Like, my offline business is pulling me away from my online business because it's like, hey, I want to buy a $500,000 house from you. And I'm 28 years old. So I could use, whatever that commission check comes out to be, either at 3 or 6%, but, it's like, okay, do I take that money, which is good, or do I double down on my live stream? And I'm trying to do both, and it's killing me. Like, you're talking about 16 hours, 18, 20-hour days, for 6 months at a time or months at a time. That's kind of where I'm at right now. And I'm like, yo, I'm 28. I need to enjoy this last part of my 20s for a little bit. So, that's a really great point that you brought up.
Well, you do, and you've got to make decisions on life balance too. Where you want to be. And I always, believed in, work hard, party hard. I did, I did a lot of travel. But a lot of my travel I ended up doing through my company. As we were growing, we were going to conferences all over the world. And when I would go to these conferences, I would always take, a couple of days on the back end or on the front end. So, we went to Seattle for like a 4-day conference, Monday to Thursday. I took the weekend before and the weekend after, stayed in Seattle, and I got to travel all around the Pacific Northwest.
Nice. Yeah, I frequently do. I leave on Thursday and I come back on Tuesday. So I have like Thursday, Friday, and then do the conference on the weekend, and then say Monday, Tuesday, develop those connections. So I like that. That's a great point.
Yeah. So I got to see a lot of new cities. I got to, do a lot of adventures. I went, I was at a venture capital conference in Park City. So I went skiing. I went hot air ballooning while I was out there. Combining work with fun. There's always downtime, or you can make downtime by tacking on an extra day. So you can get to that balance and maybe, get beyond what would have been possible if you'd just been focused on, oh, I got to go out with my friends, I got to hang out, whatever. I mean, I had to make decisions along the way that, there were people that I was close to, that I was friends with, I was hanging around a lot, but I just couldn't hang out with them because, they're at happy hour at 5 o'clock on a Friday, and I'm like working on getting a report out or finishing up a business plan or whatever the hell it was, preparing for something. And I was working all day Saturday too. I just didn't have that time anymore. So that was a conscious choice I had to make. But was it all worth it? Absolutely. Do I wish I spent more time at happy hours? No.
Nice. I love that. That's a quote right there. Do I wish I spent more time at happy hours?
Yeah. Awesome. You make your choices along the way.
Way cool. I'm going to get to some questions. Go ahead.
I was going to say, here's another thing too, though, about like entrepreneurship, especially when you build your team. And if you build the right team, and that's a choice that you don't get as much in corporate America. It's like you join a team, you become a part of the team, and you got to fit into somebody else's team. But when you're an entrepreneur and you're building a company, you build your own team. So you get to cherry pick, hand pick who you want to be on your team. And that becomes like your family and your social world in a sense, right? If you do it right, you're around those people, but you're around those people because you want to be around those people, right?
Right.
And we had an unbelievable team, and we had a ton of fun. It became, like a whole social network unto itself. And we liked working with each other. We liked being with each other. So we'd go to a conference in San Antonio. We'd go to a conference in San Francisco or Philadelphia, wherever it might be. And we're hanging out with the people that we wanted to hang out with anyway. It was the people at our company.
Nice. That's great. That's great advice. I'm going to get some of the questions that we have. This is from Vegan Travel, and she is actually really interesting. She has a full-service eco and adventure travel agency, and she wants to know, what other platforms are you on, Mr. Clark?
So I am playing around with some of the other ones. I've had a couple of challenges with Blab. I guess a lot of people have had some challenges, and we understand that they're shifting their overall corporate strategy. So everybody's kind of scrambling to look for what the next thing is. I played around with Fire Talk. I don't like the fact that you can only have 2 people in the window. I've been playing around with Facebook Live. Again, that's not conducive yet to a conversation. I understand that's going to be coming, but I need something that's conversational because that's how I roll. I have played around with Spreecast. That's the one that I like the best so far. But yesterday I found Huzzah, and Huzzah shows a lot of promise. They've got a built-in monetization system. You can see that they're already building into the platform, e-commerce. So they've got an ability to sell products right from the site, which I think is brilliant. They've also, I was on a call that the founders did yesterday, and they're doing a lot of things to help broadcasters monetize what they're doing, but to make sure that they've got a sustainable business model as they develop and grow. That's the thing that's, they have in common with like a Spreecast or Fire Talk. They've got built-in inherent working sustainable business models that are going to enable them to, succeed over the long term.
Definitely. Rapid fire question time, because I know your time is very valuable, Mr. Clark. Sunshine Lady Annette out in Germany says, asks, what is the most important thing to be successful in a business?
You know what? Resilience. You got to be resilient. Look, I started out reading books on, I just started out reading books on finance, and from finance, I realized I had to learn more about, let's say, accounting, and then I had to learn more about corporate finance, and then I had to learn more about marketing, really, right? And then marketing led me to reading more and learning more about sales and sales psychology. And at the end of the day, if you're in business because you're selling something, a product or a service to somebody else. So if you're a CEO of a company, you got to be like the salesman in chief. And if you haven't developed your sales skills, you're not gonna win at the end of the day, unless you build a team that's got those. But the key to sales is you've got to be resilient. You've got to be able to bounce back, because sales is about getting past, getting through, rejection. You've got to reach out to, let's say 1,000 people, and if your close ratio is 5%, that means only 50 people are buying. That's 950 people that are saying no to you, right? Psychologically, that can be a big barrier for a lot of people. So you got to have a tough skin. You got to be resilient. And you got to realize that, like, hey, this is how the game works. It's a numbers game. I got to call those 1,000 people. Otherwise, I'm not going to get to those 50 people. It's like, yeah, maybe I can worry and focus on trying to get my conversion rate up from 5% to 7.5% or to 10 or whatever the number might be. But you're not going to get it to 100%. You're not going to, get to every person you talk to is going to buy from you.
Definitely. I agree wholeheartedly. 100% cosign. Final question. We're going to wrap up. This is from Mr. Kevin Arrow out in the UK. He is a blogger out there, and he's got his own online marketing company, and he works with SMEs to achieve online success. And he asks, life balance, does it really exist, or is it all integrated? And I know you touched on that earlier.
Yeah, I'm a big believer in life balance, and it's kind of like steering a ship or an airplane, right? When an airplane flies from New York City, flies from New York City to, let's say, San Francisco, that plane is off course 90 to 95% of the time. It's going in the wrong direction, right? And the only reason it ever makes there is because of continuous course corrections that the pilot makes. So it goes a little bit far to the left, he turns it back to the right. Then he goes too far to the right, he turns it back to the left. He's going too far down, he's got to bring the plane back up to level. Too far up, he's got to bring it back. He's constantly off course, and by continuously making those course corrections, that's what gets the plane from New York to San Francisco. Similar in your life, it's like, is life balance possible? Absolutely. So, exercise every morning, meditate, pray, show gratitude every morning, whatever it is, get your spiritual life together, get your physical life together, get your family life, your emotional life together, and, get in balance. Are you going to be out of balance? You're always going to be out of balance. So it's a series of, you're the pilot. You've got to make continuous course corrections. Like, man, I haven't exercised in 3 days. I got to get back out there. I got to get back on track, and I got to make this more of a priority. I haven't spent time with my wife or my kids. I got to make sure that I'm making them a priority. The story about the jar of rocks. It's a famous metaphor.
Never heard of it, no.
Jar of rocks. So the professor comes into his class, right, and he brings a big glass jar, right, and sets it on the table, right? Then he takes out a bag, right, and he takes rocks out of the bag, and he fills the jar up with the rocks, right? And he asked the class, is this jar full? And the class says, yeah, it's full. They all agree. You can't get any more rocks in there. So then he takes out some rocks that are about half the size of those rocks, like, you know, smaller rocks. And he like jiggles the thing and he sticks them in around into the empty spaces, right? And he fills that up. He says, is the jar full now? He says, well, yeah, now the jar is full. You know, you definitely can't get any more in there. So he takes out some pebbles, right? And he dumps the pebbles in there, right? And he shakes it around and he gets the pebbles. And now the thing looks really full. He says, is the jar full now? I was like, well, absolutely. There's no way you can get any more rocks in there now. So he takes out a bag of sand, right? He pours the sand in and he shakes it around and the sand fills up. And now there's no more space at all. It's like, all right, you know, you got us again, but there's absolutely, you know, no more space in there. The sand is taking up every nook and cranny. Then he takes a pitcher of water and he pours the water and the water fills it up. And, you know, he dumps the whole pitcher of water in. So there was more room.
I love that.
So he says, okay, you know, what was the point of this exercise? And one of the students raises his hand and says, it's like, you know, well, you can always do more. You can always fit more into your day or your schedule. And he's like, no, you missed the entire point of the exercise. That's not the point. He says, yes, this is a metaphor about your life. This is a metaphor about your schedule and you know, how you live your life. But the point is, the rocks are the important things in your life. The important things are your family, your kids, your exercise, right? Your health. Okay. And if I hadn't put those rocks in first, they never would have fit. There would be no room in. If I had started with the water and the sand, I never could have gotten the rocks in. So take those big, you know, life priorities, those things that you know, you're looking to remain in balance, your family, your relationships, your physical health, your emotions, your emotional balance, your intellectual balance, you know, reading, sharpening the saw, etc. Right? Make sure you make time for those. Schedule that time every day. Schedule 20 minutes in the morning for, you know, your meditation, your prayer, your gratitude exercises, whatever you're going to do. Make sure you're doing your 30 to 60 minutes every morning, right, for exercise, that you're connecting with your wife, you're connecting with your kids. You've got that time built in that every day you know that you're doing that. And when you schedule that in first, you'll squeeze everything else in around that. But then you'll also have that balance, you know, going throughout your life.
That's phenomenal. We got to end the show on that. That was great. Mr. Clark, thank you so much for taking the time. We know that you're busy. Really appreciate you. And I'm definitely going to come up to see you in New York. I want to go to the Startup Con next time you guys do that. Definitely let us know. I'll bring some peeps from the Talent Tribe out there. And if you guys want to reach Mr. Frank Clark, you can go to his website, and I'm pulling that up right now, and that is frankclarkcoaching.com, correct?
Yep, frankclarkcoaching.com is my opt-in page. So if you go to Frank Clark Coaching and send me your email, it will give you, I think I'm delivering 2 outstanding videos that I did, as well as the list of my top 12 or 13 books for entrepreneurs. So you can see I'm a reader. I read a lot, and people are always asking me for a book about this, book about that. So my favorite baker's dozen, if you will, 13 books, is something that a gift that I'll give to you along with those 2 videos. One on negotiation with the former lead hostage negotiator from the FBI, Christopher Voss, who I've interviewed a few times here on Blab and spent some time with in person. Fantastic guy, and one of the critical skills for any entrepreneur. And the other one, I believe, is all about persuasion and influence with best-selling author Dave Lakhani, who, again, I've interviewed multiple times here on Blab.
That's amazing. And I've caught that interview on negotiation so you taught me a quick tip that was like, if you want to ask somebody something, start off with, would it be ridiculous if Frank Clark accompanied me? And I think that's how I got you on the show. I was like, Frank, would it be ridiculous if we got you on a show with me? So I turned it on you.
Yeah, and that was a you know, a little language pattern that Chris taught us that basically was how he was able to get Jack Welch to come and speak to his MBA students. Now you can imagine Jack Welch, former CEO of GE, very busy guy, doesn't just go around speaking to MBA classes, right? But he was able to get Jack Welch to agree to come speak to his MBA class just with that little language pattern. So it's a very powerful tool. And that interview, you will learn so many golden nuggets of a true master on negotiation. So it's well worth your while.
Definitely, definitely. Again, you can go to www.frankclarkcoaching, and we're going to put it down here in Blab, and then we're going to have this on the show notes on YouTube and wherever we disperse this and moving forward. So, Frank, thanks again so much. Thank you for being on the show. Really appreciate it.
My pleasure. Always fun to talk with you, Frank, and I really enjoyed being on here. Thank you.
All right.